about the impact a prior Venables alignment would have on local business, so this alignment specifically. Now, I've prepared a brief presentation for you. I will reference my speaking notes as I go, and I understand there may be a few minutes at the end to answer any questions you have. I will do my best. Aha. So the three questions I seek to answer for you today: who is the Strathcona Business Improvement Association? How would a prior Venables alignment impact business in Strathcona? And what principles can we offer you as you consider impact to Strathcona's local business community? Strathcona BIA members operate on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, whose cultures and economies have shaped this community for thousands of years and will continue to shape it now and into the future. The Strathcona BIA vision is to ensure our members thrive in a mixed-use, inclusive, resilient, and prosperous local economy. So we do this through advocacy, by cultivating relationships, by supporting business participation in the community, by delivering innovative programs to our members, and by fostering community leaders. Okay. So we are one of 22 BIAs in the City of Vancouver serving the needs of business members in this particular community of Strathcona. I answer to a board of directors made up of 10 business leaders from Strathcona. This is an elected body of leadership. And essentially I have 10 bosses here who I'm representing today, and they in turn represent our members. Our catchment area runs north to Railway Street, west to Gore Avenue, south to Venables Prior, and just past Clark, representing businesses on the eastern side of Clark. So we have an interesting shape and catchment. That's 44 square blocks, over 850 business members, sharing space across 413 commercial properties. Properties with a total assessment value of approximately $1.8 billion. We are a member-centric organization funded by our members through a levy. They do elect their board of directors. And our membership is made up of property owners, operators, business tenants, and social service organizations. Our zoning is a mix of commercial, industrial, manufacturing, and residential. And 62% of commercial floor space in Strathcona is dedicated to industrial use. Now, within the SBIA, we categorize across 10 different industry sectors. We've got food, which includes food manufacturing, manufacturing of goods in retail and hospitality. We've got the trades, automotive services, wholesale businesses, community associations, as well as social service organizations. We have professional services, the high-tech industry, and artist studios. This is a big slide. There's a lot of information on here. We've reviewed the materials you've all seen to date regarding the prior Venables arterial option. We've considered this route, and the way we see it, there are at least 31 businesses who would today be directly affected by any changes to priors and Venables, and I stress at least. These are businesses who have been identified and are SBIA members. So remember, our catchment ends at Prior and Venables. There are still more businesses further south and east that would no doubt feel the impact as well, and these businesses aren't represented necessarily by the SBIA, but we consider ourselves good neighbors to our surrounding neighborhood businesses. We've also identified at least 5 local businesses and SBIA members who would face direct displacement with a prior Venables artery options, whose direct needs would need to be considered by all of you and by the city as well. And those are the 5. Thank you. So I've told you who the SBIA is. I've given you a list of impacted businesses and a short list of those businesses who face direct impact with the prior Venables alignment. And I guess the question is, what do you do with all that? I'm inviting you to consider two sets of principles when you think about the impact of business with the prior Venables option moving forward. The first set is people principles. And here's what I mean by people principles. The first principle being that of safety. Safety is so much harder to achieve than folks initially realize, especially in an urban area with a waterfront, with a port, with two railways running through your community, with access to cars and trucks making their way to Highway 1 and the rest of the province. There's a lot going on as far as goods movement and industry in Strathcona. And so there's a lot to think about. There's a lot for the city to think about and negotiate as well. I'm sorry to say that in the last 7 days, there have been 2 people who have died because of accidents on the Hastings corridor alone, very close to where we all are right now. One at Clark and Hastings in a car accident, and another at Commercial and Hastings, which involved a pedestrian crossing the street. There is a crosswalk just out here at Clark and Francis, very close to the proposed prior Venables artery, that has been on the city's schedule to be enhanced with a pedestrian signal and lights for more than 2 years. Nothing's happened. We advocated for that crosswalk, we engaged our membership. I know the city works very hard and they're stretched, but I'm just trying to bring across the fact that just because we want safety doesn't mean it happens right away. And so it's your job as a panel to make sure that safety is a principle considered moving forward with this artery and is advocated on behalf of. The principle of mobility. This means walking, biking, parking, and public transit for our businesses, their employees, and their customers and clients. The principle of access. And what I mean by access is access to amenities and green space. Our businesses, their employees, and their customers need to be able to eat and be outside in our community. Which leads me to the fourth principle of beautification and placemaking, and this is a foundational principle to the work of all BIAs. We believe at the SBIA an arterial route should be beautiful and set the conditions for community building and public space. I'm also inviting you to consider a set of principles when thinking, business principles, when thinking about the prior Venables arterial option. The number one being no loss of industrial land, and we heard from Petra on the importance of industrial space and land in our city already. We do not want to lose 1 square foot. If we lose just 10% of our city's industrial businesses in the next 2 years, we lose $700 million in revenue that stays in our city, 6,000 jobs, and $250 million in wages to people who work here. We want you to consider the respect for the role business plays in the local economy as a principle. Our local businesses employ people who live here, they serve our communities directly, they keep money in our communities, and they promote an economic cycle that sets the conditions for a healthy community. We'd like you to consider efficient goods movement as a principle. From the food you eat that is processed here, from the car that you had fixed at one of our auto body shops, to the bike that you had built or serviced here in Strathcona, all these things need to move from one place to another. So we need you to protect not only our industrial spaces, but enhance the onloading and offloading capabilities of these spaces. And that means thinking about how trucks and cars turn and flow into traffic. That means thinking about access to loading bays, alleyways, and driveways. We'd like you to consider property assessment. Simply put, our land is valuable. It's worth $1.8 billion collectively. It's expensive, and that needs to be reflected in any displacement scenarios. And finally, a commitment to fairness, transparency, and engagement when it comes to working with local business. So I invite you, the panel, to think as yourselves as a good neighbor to Strathcona businesses. Put yourself in their shoes. What are the needs and conditions you require if you were a business here to contribute to a healthy community, a thriving local economy that is resilient, safe, and necessary. Thank you so much for your time and your commitment and your service to this work. And I do hope that the 8 principles we've provided you with will be a guide as you move forward with this very important decision making. So thank you again.
Great.